Oftentimes when we talk about lawmakers fighting against lowering drug prices, we talk about GOP lawmakers. But in a system of legalized bribery, you can expect some corporate Democrats to do the same. And Representative Jake Aunchincloss is certainly no exception, or he is certainly in favor of fighting any effort to increase drug prices, and it's probably because he's raised quite a bit of money from the pharmaceutical industry. Now, on May 3rd, Aunchincloss, the recipient of more than $66,000 in campaign contributions from the pharmaceutical industry during the 2019 and 2020 election cycle alone, spearheaded a letter in which he and 9 other conservative House Democrats, meaning there's 9 other Democrats involved in this, conveyed their opposition to HR 3, the Lower Drug Costs Now Act, a drug price negotiation bill. So with the resistance of 10 Democrats in the House, you have 10 Democrats that are voting as a block to block this legislation, which means that it won't even pass in the House that's controlled by Democrats. And so we need to be real about what this is. It's not just Republican lawmakers who fight tooth and nail to ensure that we're all paying more for pharmaceutical drugs than we need to. It's also Democrats. And in this case, you have 10 Democrats who are willing to do this and vote as a block to block this bill. And I don't see any negative press coverage about it, really. No negative press coverage, none. Other than, of course, independent media sources. Common Dreams wrote about this. Now, there are some progressives who are trying to fight back. So in response to Aunchincloss's led attempt to block Democratic efforts to lower drug prices, Social Security Works and Organize for Justice, a sister organization of Justice Democrats, are calling out the right-wing Democrat for putting the financial interests of Big Pharma above the well-being of his constituents. And one way that they're doing so is by parking this billboard truck right in front of his office that calls him out for blocking this legislation.
Yeah, so 3 really important parts of this story. Number 1, it turns out you can block legislation. So we have 10 Justice Democrats. They haven't blocked anything yet, but 10 conservative Democrats without any qualm and without any pushback at all. Just like easy as can be. Oh, you want to lower prescription drug prices? The single most popular thing in America. No, we get paid by the drug companies. And we know that the media will say nothing about it. And honestly, our Democratic colleagues will say nothing about it because, oh, we're Democrats and we're in tough districts, or that's usually their excuse. In reality, they just want more legalized bribes. So you won't raise your voice, you won't fight back, and we'll kill this bill so easy. One of the most popular things in America. They had no qualms at all.
Right.
When progressives say, hey, can you guys block a bill if it doesn't have $15 minimum wage in it? Oh, no, qualms, we can't. Really, why? The conservatives do it all the time at the drop of a hat without moment's hesitation for $66,000. They're cheap, okay? Now, the second thing is what Anna said. When progressives thought about it for half a second, should we block a bill in order to get progressive priorities in? The media is like, how dare you, you monsters!
Exactly.
You monsters, right? Conservatives blocked the most popular bill in America. Conservative Democrats, not a word. Oh, of course, why not? Conservative Democrats can do anything they want. As long as they're taking bribes, it's all good. And guys, campaign contributions from drug companies, that's why we call them legalized bribes. The drug companies are not giving it to them for charity. They're giving it to them so they could block bills like this. And the guy's not taking it and then blocking a bill coincidentally. No one could possibly believe that unless they're a schmuck or a mainstream media reporter. Okay, now finally, the third part of this is also very important. If you notice though, it's progressive groups that are fighting back. Thank you, including Justice Democrats. So the 2 groups are Social Security Works. They oftentimes do great work, okay? And Organize for Justice, that's, as Anna explained, the sister organization for Just Democrats. Alexandra Rojas, who's the executive director of Just Democrats, had a great quote. After all we've been through in this pandemic, it's unconscionable that this representative would rather do the bidding of big pharma corporate donors than lower prescription drug prices for working families. That's exactly right. See, that's strength and that's courage. I hope that that the legislators can pick up on that as well.
Yes.
And Alex Lawson from Social Security Works says there's nothing moderate or bipartisan about blocking plans to lower drug prices, and he called Aunchincloss a shill for pharmaceutical corporations. That's not pulling your punches. That's going for it and being frank and honest. And they're spending money on it to get people's attention. I mean, it's nearly impossible to get the mainstream media to cover corruption.
Right.
So, but they're doing the best that they can. So there are actually real fighters out there, and the pushback from progressive groups has begun. So that's great.
It is great, but I wonder what it's going to take to get progressive Democrats, at least like Justice Democrats in the very least, to have the confidence to also vote as a bloc or withhold their vote as a bloc in order to use the leverage that they do have, especially in situations where they find themselves having to make a decision about a must-pass bill, right? So look, the coronavirus relief bill was a must-pass bill. I mean, that was something that whether corporate Democrats liked it or not, they needed to pass. And if you have a block of progressive Democrats saying, no, we're gonna block this bill unless we get our concessions put in, hold their feet to the fire. They have no choice but to negotiate with you the same way that they're pandering and negotiating with Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin in the Senate. But there are gonna be other opportunities moving forward, and they need to have the confidence to coordinate, work together in solidarity to block legislation until we ensure that we get the progressive priorities implemented.
Yeah, so it's not that the progressive legislators aren't doing anything. No, and sometimes they're doing wonderful work, like Cori Bush on qualified immunity. She's been a champion there. So credit where credit is due. But at the same time, when push comes to shove and power is really on the line, whether you're gonna pass a bill that has our priorities or not, so far they haven't insisted. That's just the reality. And so people can say, hey, Cenk, don't tell people the truth or the reality of it, but it is, that's just the fact. So it doesn't matter because you could make up for it at any point. You could do it in the infrastructure bill, you could do it in the budget. Now we wait to see if they're gonna do it in any bill. Because right now, the Republicans and corporate Democrats like Manchin are shredding the infrastructure bill. That's the thing progressives are super excited about because it had green energy proposals. They've already killed most of the green energy proposals. So are the progressives going to show up to the battlefield? Are they going to say, no, then we're voting no on the infrastructure bill because it doesn't have the green energy provisions we wanted. So super easy, just like Aunchincloss voted no on prescription drug prices. In fact, you can make that point on the floor of the House and it would get a ton of attention. Why do you need the attention? So that you can point out what is wrong, what the hypocrisy is, and what you're fighting for, which is justice. So if they don't do that in the infrastructure bill and they don't do it in the budget, then it's honestly, it's hopeless. Because if our folks don't fight for our policies, then I don't know what we did it for. And so I'm being honest with you, I wish I could give you better news, and hopefully one day I will. But right now, other than the groups beginning the fight, we don't yet have good news on progressives being strong in Congress and actually insisting, which Aunchincloss proves for the bad guys, that you could do super easily anytime you want.
Captain Cornball is asking, does this mean that Aunchincloss is the opposite of Santa Claus? And that was an excellent joke.
In a sense.
It's the kind of dad joke I'm here for.
Yeah, I hear you. But I think just Democrats, and they're doing it as a group now, should be in a sense Santa Claus. We're keeping a list of who's naughty and nice. And that's how politics works. That's the whole point of Justice Democrats. And if you're gonna be a guy who says, I'm gonna take $66,000 just to make sure you can pay higher drug prices, well, you go on the naughty list and you get a primary. And we should not be at all hesitant about that. If you're gonna work for corporate interests, we're gonna come for you. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.